Good evening and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching the special broadcast at 8. On tonight's show, we continue with our ongoing coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's much anticipated visit to the United States. Now, Prime Minister Modi will land in Washington, D.C. at about 6 a.m. India time tomorrow, that is Sunday, for his first meeting with President Donald Trump of the U.S. We have a distinguished panel of experts to discuss the visit. With me in the studio is Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, and joining us via Skype would be Pramit Chaudhuri, foreign editor of Hindustan Times newspaper. So let's get started. A news just coming in that Prime Minister Modi will have a one-on-one closed-door meeting with President Trump. Reports say the meeting is likely to last about 20 minutes. All right, joining us from Washington is WION's correspondent Archit Chaudhuri. Archit, over to you.
During his 3 years in office, Narendra Modi certainly knows how to play the foreign policy game. In fact, just this year alone, he's met with many world leaders, including Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, France, Germany, Spain, and Russia, and many more to go, including the Netherlands and Israel. So, whether it's courting Israel or pushing Pakistan hard, Modi certainly knows how to play his diplomacy game and putting India on the global pedestal. That's exactly what he'll strive to do as he meets with Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. on Monday to further strengthen India and the U.S.'s relationship.
My government has moved with a great sense of priority and speed to turn our Look East policy into the Act East policy, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said while addressing the East Asia Summit in Myanmar in 2014. Indeed, Narendra Modi's first foreign visit as the Prime Minister was to Bhutan in June 2014. In May 2015, Narendra Modi would visit Mongolia. It was the first time any Indian Prime Minister had visited the country. But that never meant that the Prime Minister would limit his foreign policy to India's immediate neighbourhood. He is already on a three-nation tour of Portugal, United States and the Netherlands. And he is slated to visit Israel in the first week of July. In fact, the Prime Minister has made at least 56 foreign visits by April 2017. Narendra Modi has displayed willingness to project India not just as a regional but a global leader ready to provide leadership and assume responsibility. So it doesn't come as a surprise when the Prime Minister vowed to go above and beyond the Paris Climate Accord on combating climate change, despite Trump's US pulling out of the agreement. So what makes Prime Minister Narendra Modi board Air India One and fly thousands of miles to faraway countries? The reason is simple. India is now a part of a global ecosystem after opening up its economy in the 90s. And yet the country hasn't been able to reap the dividends in entirety. Foreign capital and investment remains a big challenge. World Bank has placed India at the 130th spot out of 190 countries in terms of ease of doing business. The Prime Minister wants us to break into the top 50. Our trade deficit was close to $14 billion in May 2017. 1 million Indians reach employable age each month, but the paucity of jobs hurts our growth. We are one of the largest arms importers. The Prime Minister wants India to acquire defense technologies to end reliance on foreign countries. If successful, it would save India billions of dollars every year. However, despite the Prime Minister's outreach, challenges abound. While immediate neighbour Pakistan continues to test India's patience, China too has adopted a hawkish approach. It will take many more foreign visits, delegation-level talks and concrete follow-up action to propel India towards sustained growth. We'll have to quickly manufacture and acquire defence technologies to strengthen our armed forces for regional stability. And the Prime Minister would certainly assess Trump's policies when he meets the US President, even as Trump's US accuses India of eyeing American jobs and billions of dollars in aid. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, so is Prime Minister Modi coming into his own, and is India becoming an indispensable partner in the reshaping of the new world order. But before we discuss that, in news just coming in, to remind our viewers and bring them up to speed with the latest news coming out of Washington, Prime Minister Modi will have a one-on-one closed-door meeting with President Trump. Reports say the meeting is likely to last about 20 minutes. All right, to throw open the discussion about Sajjanhar, this news coming in about the one-on-one meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. How significant would you say this meeting is, especially this one-on-one meeting, the first meeting in their respective terms?
As you put it very rightly, Ramesh, that's the first meeting, although both the leaders have spoken to each other on 3 earlier occasions. One at the instance of Prime Minister Modi immediately after the victory of President Trump, and twice in the reverse direction. So this face-to-face meeting, I think, is going to be the most significant and crucial interaction between the two leaders.
Why do you say that?
I say this because I think this visit is really designed to establish a comfort level between the two leaders. And this is the opportunity when there is no one around and they are really able to get to know each other, meet each other, try to probe each other, and see what is the expanse, what is the strategic vision of each other to take the relationship
and maybe
forward.
Test their chemistry as well?
Absolutely, the personal chemistry, the personal rapport, because I think that has been one of the strengths as far as Prime Minister Modi is concerned, because wherever he has gone, he has been able to establish that personal relationship. And fine, interests are very important, very significant in taking any bilateral relationship forward. But I think this personal connect is also very, very important when you're talking to countries, whether, when he speaks with Angela Merkel, or even now when he met President Macron or Vladimir Putin. We saw the body language, we saw how comfortable they were with each other, and I think that always helps to take the bilateral relationship forward.
Indeed. And if I can pose the same question to you, Pramit. Pramit, we know that a one-on-one meeting has been scheduled and also followed by a dinner, which is a first for any head of government visiting Washington under the Trump presidency. Now, before you answer that question, I want to just bring our viewers up to speed with similar meetings with President Trump and other heads of state or government. Remember, President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China, remember they met in Mar-a-Lago not so long ago for about 15-20 minutes, but the meeting eventually went on for about 3 hours. So anything can happen when Trump and Modi meet tomorrow and the day after. Pramit, so what do you make of this one-on-one meeting and the dinner that's the first honor accorded to a visiting head of government?
The point of the Trump administration and the Modi government has been that the Indian system has already met virtually all the senior members of the Trump administration. This includes the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor, the Homeland Security Advisor, the Chief Strategist in the White House, Steve Bannon. They've met Jared Kushner, the son-in-law. And the Indian side has come back and said, we have a relatively positive feedback from almost everybody in the Trump administration about India. However, the only thing that has been missing has been the final stamp of approval from President Trump himself. Again, in their phone conversations, Modi and Trump have also been have had no serious problems. So this was the only missing part on that relationship. The Trump administration is relatively unusual by the standards of recent American governments in that the president himself has subcontracted a lot of the policy to his secretaries of state. So, for example, in Afghanistan, he has said that the Secretary of Defense Mattis will decide even troop deployment levels, something that traditionally only a president would make the decision on. And he said Mattis will make that call. So our sense in the Indian system, and I've talked to people here, is that we have a government that at the lower level is prepared to work with India and continue a relationship that goes back to the Bush and Obama administrations. But they need the president to come out and say, I like India and I think this is good, and my people will go ahead and carry on take forward a relationship that has already been established.
Right.
This will be the primary objective of this visit, is to get that sense of approval from Trump and to make sure that in any way he does not disrupt the relationship in a manner that disallows his cabinet members from moving it forward.
Right. And before I go back to my colleague Archit in Washington, Ambassador Sajjanhar, for the viewers, benefit of viewers who might not be familiar with these high-level summitry, as it were, what exactly happens when two heads of government or state meet? How is this one-on-one meeting conducted, with or without aides, and what is the protocol or the format, as it evolves?
What will happen, what I foresee is going to happen here is that in the White House, in the Oval Office, they are going to meet. There are easy chairs put, and both of them are going to sit. There are no officials who are going to be present, but they have the possibility of having the interpreters with them if they so desire. Like as you mentioned, in the case of Xi Jinping, it took 3 hours, but much of the time would have been taken up by translation also. But in this present case, of course, the Prime Minister always has his interpreter with him. So that would be there. He always likes to talk in Hindi and get that translated. And then they spend time, they are trying to know each other. And that is what happens. If it is the first time, then of course, going back on the telephonic conversations.
Right.
And let me also say that the telephonic conversations have been very positive. They have spoken about how there is a convergence of values, how they need to take this relationship forward, make it stronger. So I think it is really going to take on from there. And after that, after they have finished this conversation, they come out and sit in an official meeting room, conference hall, where their delegations also join.
Indeed. Ambassador Sajjanhar and Pramit, please hold your thought while we quickly go across to Lisbon in Portugal for the latest visuals coming to you from the Prime Minister Modi's ongoing visit to that country. Right, so these are the live visuals coming to you from Lisbon in Portugal. Portugal, remember, is the first country, the first leg of Prime Minister Modi's three-nation tour, which will also take him to the US and then to the Netherlands. And on your screens right now are the two heads of government, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister António Costa of Portugal, about to address the media. And these are the exchanging agreements. There on the right-hand side of the screens is the Indian ambassador to Portugal, exchanging one agreement with her Portuguese counterpart. And we can expect similar exchanges to happen momentarily while the two heads of government stand by to deliver their addresses, respective addresses to the media. All right, while we wait for the two heads of state and government in Lisbon to address the media, let me quickly go across to my colleague Archit, who is standing by in Washington. Archit?
The year was 2014. Fresh off his electoral victory, Narendra Modi met with then U.S. President Barack Obama. They exchanged pleasantries. In fact, Obama greeting Modi in his native Gujarati saying "Kem Cho," Modi gifting him a Bhagavad Gita. India and the United States enjoyed a fruitful relationship during the Obama administration. There was a lot that India benefited from, especially on the Obama administration's take on Pakistan, as well as the push to get India into the NSG. The big question now is, there is a new person in the White House, Donald Trump. How exactly will Modi be able to continue that relationship, India and the U.S., with a new man in the office, someone who lacks the political experience and the diplomacy? The big question will be how all of this will continue over the next 4 years during a Trump America.
मैं बहुत भाग्यशाली हूं कि मेरे देशवासी जिन्होंने भारत की आन बान शान को बढ़ाया है,
A grand reception with thousands in attendance at New York's iconic Madison Square Garden. An Indian Prime Minister on the US soil garnering worldwide attention, shedding inhibitions to mark the beginning of a new foreign policy.
एक जमाना था हमारे देश को साफ सपेरों वालों का देश माना जाता था.
We discussed towards the end of our meeting as well.
कांग्रेस का भी बहुत
The Prime Minister would later meet United States President Barack Obama at White House to start a new era of cooperation between the two countries.
भारत और अमेरिका के बीच मार्स पर समिट के बाद अब यह समिट धरती पर हो रहा है. यह शुभ संयोग हमारे संबंधों की क्षमता का प्रतिबिंब है.
The relationship between the leaders of world's oldest and biggest democracies only strengthening each time they met. And Modi and Obama would meet several times in the next couple of years, and every meet resulted in deals and greater cooperation. From US involvement in smart cities projects to partnership in the field of clean energy and upgradation in defense ties to a joint vision on regional security. Modi and Obama's personal equation aligning the interests of the states and India. So it didn't come as a surprise when Obama praised Narendra Modi as a reflection of India's potential, a leader with an ambitious vision and a man who transcended the ancient and the modern. However, Obama is now in retirement and Donald Trump is the new US President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's task is cut out. Will Trump accord the same importance to Indo-US relationship as Barack Obama did? Can Modi and Trump work together to lead India and the states on a path of mutual respect and development? A better picture will emerge when both leaders meet this Monday. Bureau Report, WION.
Pramit, if I can come to you now, I mean, this is a much anticipated visit for many reasons. But that said, I want you to talk a bit about the optics of the visit per se. Would you agree that the timing may not be that conducive for a substantial outcome, because many say Trump is buffeted by domestic crises and he might be distracted to be able to devote effort and time to this relationship?
Well, as I said, I don't think the issue is really Trump himself. Trump is not a person who really worries about micro detail and policy. He tends to basically say, okay, I get a broad sense of what the policy is, I approve, and therefore, and after that, let Secretary X, Y, and Z implement the policy. And I think that's basically what the Indian government is looking for. It's important to realize that by the end of the Obama administration, that India, starting, if you wish, from the end of the Clinton administration onwards, has accumulated a huge number of agreements and understanding with the United States on a whole slew of issues. On the defense side alone, we have things from drones to joint carrier worker development, so on and so forth, and many of which are still unfinished or unimplemented. So what we really want to accomplish is not necessarily too many new things, but we want to continue what we've already begun. Now, what is important, though, in each of these cases is that for the Secretary of Defense or the National Security Advisor to be able to get a clear green signal from his president that I approve of this, you go ahead and implement. And that's what we're looking for. So while Trump and Modi will probably meet for 15 and 20 minutes, the more substantial meeting will be the hour to 90 minutes that will be spent between the principals. In other words, the national security advisors, foreign ministers, foreign secretaries, and Secretary of State, and so on, meeting that will be held afterwards, in which the micro details of what the presidents and prime minister have approved will actually be worked out. And that's going to be what this is all about. So Trump, yes, Trump is not going to be really focused on India any more than he is focused on, frankly, on any foreign policy issue.
Right.
He will be saying just, okay, I get the idea after speaking with Modi, you and I are on the same page, and I am authorizing my cabinet to go ahead and do what we've discussed in the details. And every now and then, they'll come and say there's a question for the president to discuss. But more, I think in this presidency in particular, given Trump's personal character, he will not be particularly bothered about the smaller nitty-gritty of the actual policy. That will be left to the cabinet. And that's what he will approve of in this visit, and that's what Modi will seek.
Right. Ambassador Sajjanhar, when it comes to the substantive elements of this visit, what might be some of the deliverables in your estimation? Why? Because many people in the US, especially Indian Americans, have pointed out that this, to their mind, is a hastily arranged visit and low on expectations.
Well, Ramesh, if you permit, just for 1 minute, I will address your earlier question also. In my view, and also, you know, what you have mentioned, that it's a hastily arranged visit. I do not think it is a hastily arranged visit.
Okay.
And secondly, I feel that the time is very appropriate for two reasons. One is that after the three conversations took place,
right,
one on the 9th of November, other on 24th of January this year, and then again on the 28th of March this year after the UP elections, when Trump had called to congratulate Prime Minister Modi. You know, the Indian side did not show that it was in a tearing hurry, indecent hurry to make a visit like some of the other leaders, I will not name, world leaders who went there, because Trump was just settling in. Now he has spent about 5 months in office. I agree that he has been distracted both domestically, but going forward, I don't think the distractions will come down any, or for that matter, internationally. You know, he's been distracted, whether Saudi Arabia, whether Syria, you know, all these other things. So I feel that this is the right time to get the focus of President Trump on India. So far, he has been distracted. Domestic and international, not South Asia, not India. This is the right time, because, and it has to be done early on in his tenure, that he is able to focus on that. Now, to come to your the question that you have, what are the deliverables? I think this has been mentioned when the visit was announced both by the State Department on the 12th of June and also by our Ministry of External Affairs on the 12th of June. They have laid out. And what I would like to draw your attention, they have of course mentioned counter-terrorism. South and Central Asia has been mentioned in the telephonic conversations. They've talked about trade, investment and two-way economic exchanges. And in the White House statement, they have also mentioned about the Indo-Pacific region. So, you know, when we are talking about our strategic concerns and anxieties as far as the rise of China is concerned, and you would recall that when President Obama was here in 2015 as the chief guest, we had signed the joint vision statement on the Asia-Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. And that was basically in terms of getting the two countries on the same page while dealing with the rise of China. So to come back to your question in terms of deliverables, I think definitely as far as the issue of terrorism is concerned, or let me come to the bilateral issues first, defense. You know, we have seen reports about the approval of sale of 22 Guardian drone to India, the possibility of Tata and Lockheed Martin with F-16. So, you know, that is what is the make in India if some manufacture starts happening here. Then as far as some of the regional and the international issues are concerned, of course, I think here also we will be speaking about NSG, India's membership of Nuclear Suppliers Group, and see how far and how much is it that the United States can help us. I think the last few days we have spoken also about nuclear energy between the two countries. We will speak about exchanges. I think H-1B visa issue will come up, but I'm sure Mr. Modi is not going to make it a controversial or a confrontational issue. I think what Mr. Modi has to, the task in front of him, the challenge in front of him is to get Mr. Trump focused on relations with India and to give the message that a strong relation is good for both the countries and the world, and also that a strong, prosperous, stable India is in the interest of the United States.
Right, fair point. Pramit, before we go into the specifics of the bilateral relationship, I want you to take a moment or two to focus or dwell upon their respective personalities. Now, here we have two leaders who have a similar worldview, both conservative politicians, both seem to have business or economy or trade investments on their mind. Both have a fraught relationship with the media, if I can put it that way. So can Trump and Modi revive the so-called Modi-Obama bromance, which most people talked about not so long ago?
You know, the point about bromance between heads of government and heads of state is that fundamentally the bromance derives from a common convergence of interests. Modi and Obama were able to develop that relationship because they had a number of common interests. Climate change, for example, was one of the major ones. The question for Modi and Trump will be, where exactly is that convergence? They will not converge on climate change. They will not converge on immigration. They will probably not converge either on trade policy either, given Trump's dislike or protectionist positions regarding countries that run trade surpluses with the United States, which India does. However, they will probably agree, as has been mentioned, on counterterrorism, and India will try to make the case that Pakistan is the country that should not be forgotten when it comes to terrorism. And given that Trump refused to meet Nawaz Sharif in Riyadh recently, I think Trump will more or less agree with that. But I think the biggest message, however, Modi will make is to make it clear that as far as the maritime Indo-Pacific sphere is concerned, India has its concerns about where China is going.
Right.
And Trump has blown hot and cold about China. We're not clear where he's going on that front. But from what I do understand is that, again, at the cabinet level, his secretaries are suitably suspicious and cautious about what China is accomplishing. So there will be a clear message, I think, from Modi on that. If they do gel on those positions, then the bromance between them will continue, and I think they will develop. And one of the interesting things that Trump does seem to believe, at least his more ideological supporters in his team, such as Steve Bannon, is that Modi's electoral victory, followed by the Brexit vote, and then finally by Trump, represented a conservative, right-wing, if you wish, nationalist global political wave.
Right.
And Modi was the bellwether of that, and Trump represented, if you wish, the high tide of that. So they see Modi as a common ideological brethren of Trump, even though I think that's a bit exaggerated, but it does help put them together.
Right. Ambassador Pramit there flagged some issues on which the two leaders may not agree. He talked about convergence and the lack of it. Now, one issue that is of causing concern to many people in India would be the contradiction in terms between Prime Minister Modi's Make in India emphasis and President Trump's emphasis on Be American and Hire American. So would you say that might cause problems going forward in their respective priorities?
Well, I think, Ramesh, if you look at it prima facie, it might appear as if there is a contradiction.
Okay.
But again, I think that will be a challenge for Prime Minister Modi to tell President Trump that greater investments in India and greater prosperity in India is better for jobs in America.
Okay.
You know, if I could give you an example, I remember that I was in Washington at that time when President Bush had come here in 2006, and he went around and he saw in Bangalore, and he saw Hewlett-Packard, he saw Microsoft, he saw Westinghouse refrigerator, etc.
Right.
And he said, you know, if there is prosperity in India, then only you will be able to import American products. And I think this is the sort of message also that we have to give there, that investments, US investments coming in India are good also for the American economy. So there is no dichotomy in that. And I think if we are looking also at some of the defense deals, because we are the largest importers of defense equipment, and we have seen that the United States has emerged as the second largest defense supplier, next only to Russia, over the last few years, and that has been quite a rapid rise. And there are so many other things in the pipeline. We mentioned about the Guardian drones, we mentioned about some of the others, and that if the progressive manufacturer, and India has been designated as a major defense partner. We have also signed some of the foundational agreements, Lemova and the others, we are on the way. So I think if that proceeds, then what is being said about Mr. Trump, that his always transactional. He's looking at every relationship as to what is in it for me. And I think that there will be adequate number of jobs that will be created in the United States. So there will be a beneficial, there will be a win-win scenario that will emerge out of this. So I don't think that there is, I think it is how you package it and how you present it. And I'm very confident that Mr. Modi will be able to
All right,
do that.
we'll have a conversation going here, but we'll have to quickly cut across live to Lisbon in Portugal, where Prime Minister Modi is addressing the media.
Members of the media, at the outset, I wish to convey our deepest condolences and sympathies for the victims of the devastating forest fires in Portugal last week. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Friends, we are two countries with deep historical connections and strong economic and people-to-people ties. It is therefore surprising for me to know there had never been a bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Portugal. However, I take satisfaction in the fact that this is the second summit between India and Portugal within a period of 6 months. I am grateful to Prime Minister Costa for receiving me with such warmth and affection and at such short notice. We were honored to welcome Prime Minister Costa in India in January, not only for a bilateral visit, but also as our chief guest at the Pravasi Bharati Divas, the Indian Diaspora Day celebrations. Prime Minister Costa represents the best of the Indian diaspora across the world. Friends, Prime Minister Costa and I have held wide-ranging discussions today and reviewed the progress achieved since his own landmark visit to India. Our economic ties continue to follow an upward trajectory. Bilateral trade has grown 17% last year, and the foreign direct investment from Portugal to India through modest had doubled during 2016-17. But there is much more that we can do to increase the flow of goods, service, capital, and human resources between our two economies. In the regard, Portuguese economic rebound and strong Indian growth offer excellent opportunity for us to grow together. Friends, Portugal has emerged as one of the most vibrant European ecosystems for entrepreneurship. India too is home to robust and dynamic startups industry. The startup sphere is an exciting space that blends youth, ideas, technology, innovation, and creativity to generate value and wealth for the benefit of the society. During his visit to India, Prime Minister Costa and I had discussed the India-Portugal International Startup Hub. I am pleased to see it being realized in such a short span. I look forward to its joint launch with Prime Minister Costa. The new agreements in the fields of taxation, administrative reforms, science, space, youth affairs, and sports outline the expanding scope of our partnership. Our cooperation in science and technology is also gaining momentum. To support our collaboration in cutting-edge technology, we have agreed to set up a joint science and technology fund of 4 million euros. We are also keen to learn from Portuguese expertise in nanotechnology, marine science, and oceanography. Space is a new area of our bilateral cooperation. This idea was born when PM Costa visited India earlier this year. We look forward to engaging with Portugal in the Atlantic International Research Center, both in the space and ocean science fields. Friends, our two countries share vibrant and growing people-to-people ties. The Indian diaspora in Portugal has played an important role in deepening our bilateral ties. Portuguese passion for football runs deep. Prime Minister Costa himself is a big football fan. This could form another league to further connect our societies. Our cultural engagement is expanding. We have set up a chair for Indian studies in University of Lisbon. Indian films are being subtitled in Portuguese, and a Hindi-Portuguese dictionary is being developed for our mutual benefit. I also thank Portugal for sharing with us a digital version of 12,000 documents comprising exchange of letters between Goa and Portugal in the 17th century. This important archive will greatly benefit our researchers. Friends, India and Portugal are strong partners in the international arena. We thank Portugal for your consistent support for India's permanent membership of the UN Security Council as well as of the multilateral export control regimes. We are also determined to deepen our cooperation against terrorism and violent extremism. Excellency, I would like to once again thank you for your warm welcome and gracious hospitality and for taking time out of your busy schedule for us. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much.
All right, so there you heard Prime Minister Modi addressing the media after his talks with Prime Minister António Costa of Portugal. Remember, Portugal is the first leg of his three-nation tour that will also take him to the US and the Netherlands. All right, we have our guests, Ambassador Sajjanhar in the studio and Pramit Chaudhuri joining us via Skype. And before we continue with the discussion on Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US, in particular defense, counter-terrorism and other regional issues such as Pakistan, Afghanistan and China, I want to quickly bring our guests in and to ask them for their preliminary views about the Portuguese leg of Prime Minister Modi's visit. Ambassador Sajjanhar, why do you think Portugal is important from India's perspective or standpoint?
You know, a large number of reasons that we have, of course, cultural, historical, civilizational links. And since Portugal is a small country, as far as our connect with that has been rather weak and contacts have been rather infrequent. So in that sense, and the fact that the Prime Minister is visiting, also that the Prime Minister is visiting when such a big carnage, fire has broken out, and it's been one of the worst tragedies that the country has experienced. And still Portugal went ahead with the visit and continued with the invitation. I think that also speaks about the very keen interest that Portugal has. Right. I think there was a huge impetus that was provided to the bilateral ties with the visit of Prime Minister António Costa when he visited India earlier this year during the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, and he was given the Pravasi Samman for that. So that has really bonded us together, and as the Prime Minister said in his statement, there are a large number of areas, sectors. you know, whether it is India's membership of the export control regimes, India's membership of the nuclear suppliers group, in the area of space, in the area of sports, in the area of arts, literature, people-to-people contacts. There's a huge variety, plurality of areas where both countries can work together and contribute to each other. And it is an important country in Europe, in EU27 now. So I think this reach out is very significant.
Fair point. And continuing with the discussion on the Prime Minister Modi's talks with the US President Obama, President Trump. Pramit, if I can bring you back to the discussion now, we were talking about the defense cooperation between India and the US. Now, we know that the next steps in strategic partnership was followed up by the DTTI. But that said, why is the US reluctant to transfer technology and co-produce and co-develop weapon systems with India? Why this reluctance on the part of the US to deliver more when it comes to defense and security cooperation with India?
Well, there are two elements that you have to keep in mind about American defense technology. One is that the bulk of that technology is actually held by the private sector, and it is not held by the United States government. So the government of the United States can get out of the way, but ultimately the private sector corporations are the ones that control the patents of the technology that we are most interested in. So they have to be reassured, the Lockheed Martins and the Boeings, that they are going to not have their technology either stolen, pirated, copied, reverse engineered. And obviously for these companies, that technology is the heart of where they make their profit. So they're always going to be very reluctant to share it. The second point, which was mentioned earlier by the ambassador, we have signed only one of the three so-called foundational defense agreements that the American government requires of its defense partners. And by not signing those agreements, two of the two agreements that we have not signed, the bulk of those documents are about the defense partner, that the other country agreeing that it will not transfer or attempt to steal that technology.
Right.
And as long as we refuse to sign those, or we continue to dilly-dally about signing them, then it legally becomes very difficult for America to provide a lot of that technology to us. The Indian system, in my view, is making an error on that point, and I think it's become mixed up in some very silly views about the foundational agreements. But if you look at the text of those agreements, they're very clear that the country at the end of it agrees that we will not transfer this technology to a third country without American permission. We will not do certain things with that technology in a manner that undermines American interest. And since America is by far the world's leader in almost all forms of defense technology, this is an absolute crucial element. Even then, there have been elements. We have the agreement on the Predator drone, the first one, the Grim Reaper agreement, and so on. There were 3 or 4 technologies that we had signed with the Obama administration about developing and co-developing and co-production. And it is one of those 3 or 4 projects that we agreed on with the previous administration. I think we've now added 2 or 3 more to that, that we want to ensure goes forward with the Trump administration, and is one of the things that will be raised at this meeting, at least at the principals meeting.
Right. And before we discuss the bilateral component of this multifaceted relationship, especially countries in India's immediate neighborhood, I want to quickly go across to my colleague Archit, who is standing by in Washington for this next report. Take a look.
Narendra Modi will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump here in Washington, D.C. on Monday. Modi's quick ascent has been attributed to his ability to make quick decisions. In fact, he's put India on the global pedestal, really pushing for strong policies on the international front. Well, here in Washington, D.C., there's a new man in town, Donald Trump, who's been in office for 6 months. He comes from a completely different background, no political experience. In fact, he comes from a business background. But the big question is, are there a lot of similarities between Modi and Trump? Are they both two sides of the same coin?
They're both outsiders who managed to rise to leadership positions, not just within their parties, but also consolidated their powers with mandates. Modi and Trump have shown that they can break the status quo in prevalent political discourse. Be it his ability to take unilateral decisions that could alter current narratives,
आज मध्यरात्रि यानी 8 नवंबर 2016 की रात्रि को 12 बजे से वर्तमान में जारी 500 रुपए और 1000 रुपए के करेंसी नोट लीगल टेंडर नहीं रहेंगे।
or his push for indigenous growth,
मैं आज लाल किले की प्राचीर से विश्व भर में लोगों से कहना चाहता हूं, कम मेक इन इंडिया।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is known for his policy-based approach towards governance. Trump, meanwhile, has managed to take decisions that are against popular opinion too, be it repealing Obamacare.
Today, the House is voting to repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a very close vote. After we repeal and replace Obamacare, and by the way, it's close not because Obamacare is good, it's close for politics. They know it's no good. Everybody knows it's no good.
Or his crackdown on travel from 6 Muslim-majority nations, which has also been subjected to widespread legal purview. In keeping with his Make America Great Again motto, Trump has managed to curtail influx of immigrants by a crackdown on H-1B visas. Modi too pushed for indigenous growth by bringing in policy initiatives like Make in India, Digital India. But when it comes to global posturing, while Trump has minced no words in criticizing and then pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, a move denounced by global leaders and also leading to America's greater isolation, India, under the leadership of Modi, has vied for a greater role in South Asian geopolitics. The two leaders have had unique communication strategies. While they have both faced a fair share of criticism, Modi has managed to gain a mass appeal owing to his eloquence, alliterations and acronyms. Trump, meanwhile, has managed to raise quite a storm with his Twitter tirades. The real test of their compatibility will be seen only when the two world leaders meet this Monday. Will Modi and Trump be able to bond over shared concerns, or will differences of interest mar the talks, is a question only time will answer. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, in the last segment of the discussion tonight, I want to focus on the regional dimension of the India-US ties, namely countries in India's immediate neighborhood, such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, and most notably China. Ambassador Sajjanhar, is China the proverbial elephant in the room? Would it be the elephant in the room when Prime Minister Modi meets with President Trump?
You know, China, in my view, is going to be a very important and a significant area of discussions when the two leaders meet. We have to see where Trump has come from and is, in my view, his position on China is still
evolving?
Not crystallized.
Okay.
It is yet evolving, because if you look at what he used to say during his campaign time, he called it a currency manipulator, he called it a thief, and so on and so forth. But after his first meeting with Xi Jinping in Florida in April, you know, he started calling him the most respected leader, and when North Korea did his ballistic missile test, he said it's showing disrespect to China and so on and so forth, because it's I think Trump thought that China would be able to help it out as far as the North Korean issue is concerned. But we have seen from early April, now it is to the end of June, so about 3 months, and China has really not been able to deliver, and that is creating some disgruntlement and dissatisfaction as far as Mr. Trump is concerned. Now, if you come to India in that sense, you know, meaning as far as India is concerned, Mr. Trump always had good things to say about Mr. Modi also, except this tirade on the 1st of June when he was getting out of it. So I think there is possibility of very good bonding, both on the India-US front and also when they're talking about China, because there is concern about China, what China is doing in the South China Sea, in East China Sea, elsewhere, now with the Belt Road Initiative also, although Trump did send a representative there. But I think the manner in which this hegemonistic rise and this assertive expansion of influence of China is taking place, I think this will touch a chord both in Trump, his establishment, administration, and also Mr. Modi.
Sure. And Pramit, quickly on China again. Now, President Trump does not seem to be as bullish as Obama was on the US's pivot or rebalance to Asia. Now, given that, what role do you foresee India can play in the Indo-Pacific region, especially during the Trump presidency?
I think India will make the case that, first, that there is such a thing as the Indo-Pacific. It was something that was not completely clear with the Trump administration, that the Indian Ocean, the strategic environment of the Indian and Pacific Oceans are essentially one. And I do believe that Modi will raise this with Trump and try to make him understand or endorse this idea. Second, the Indian side will make the argument that, at least in the Indian, and I think what we will see is some sort of, I understand, some sort of an understanding between the two on the issue of combined maritime operations or patrols in the Indian Ocean. It's definitely on the agenda, and whether it'll be finalized in time for the trip is not clear yet. But that will be a further step in towards merging the two policies of the countries regarding the Indo-Pacific.
Right.
So a lot of these will be laid at the table, on the table by India. And I think it will also make the argument that when it comes to Pakistan, that ultimately Pakistan is a subset of China's Asia policy.
Right.
And the two, Pakistan and China, ultimately cannot be completely separated.
Sure. Since you mentioned Pakistan, Pramit, does the American government see Pakistan as a part of the problem or the solution? I mean, why is Washington so reluctant to call Pakistan's bluff when it comes to, encouraging terrorist groups in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, all directed against India and the other neighbors?
Well, actually, the Trump administration has been actually quite strong in its language regarding Pakistan. As I mentioned, Trump refused to meet Nawaz Sharif recently at the Riyadh meeting. People like McMaster and Mattis and so on have all come out very strongly and said that Pakistan's actions on terrorism are unacceptable. And Mattis, in particular, has made it very clear that America will, in fact, continue and increase its military presence in Afghanistan, a key Indian concern, because Pakistan has seen the slow withdrawal of American military capacity out of Afghanistan as an opportunity for it to foist the Taliban on the regime in Kabul. And we're actually, under Obama, we actually saw the fear was that was going to happen. And now Trump has begun to reverse that, basically telling Mattis, you go ahead and do what you want. Mattis, Kelly, McMaster, all three of them, all key members of his foreign policy team, should remember, are people who served in Afghanistan as soldiers. I mean, they were generals or officers there, and are very clear in their minds that they know, because they were there, that Pakistan provided safe havens and continues to provide safe havens for the Taliban and the Haqqani network.
Sure. On that note, I want to quickly bring in Archit back again in the discussion and listen in to this last report filed by him from Washington.
Donald Trump's foreign policy is still taking shape, but some of those are already impacting India, including the H-1B visa issue. In fact, there are other things that are already concerning India, like Trump's stance on China, which seems to be softening compared to what he was when he was a presidential candidate. Remember, China is opposing India's bid into the NSG and blocking the sanctions against Pakistani-based terrorist Masood Azhar. So the big question is, how much of foreign policy will be discussed on Monday when Trump meets Modi?
Narendra Modi will join Donald Trump for dinner at the White House, the first for any foreign leader. Indian Ambassador Navdeep Sarna admits it's a special gesture.
We are looking forward to a very good visit. A very good program has been lined up by the White House. And we expect that it will provide sufficient time for the two leaders to get to know each other as well as to exchange views.
But beyond gestures and photo ops, there is a sense of urgency in the Indian establishment to revive the Indo-US relations. Trump's recent accusations of India eyeing American aid and jobs have not in any way helped that cause.
When US President Donald Trump and Narendra Modi meet face-to-face on Monday, it'll be interesting to find out what specific issues they'll be able to address. Will they talk about trade, terrorism, technology, or all of the above? What's interesting is they both had a cordial relationship before when they've talked on the phone. They're both loud personalities, both dominating, but who will dominate the conversation? They're also both nationalistic, pushing for a Make America Great Again, and of course, Narendra Modi pushing for a Make in India campaign. So how exactly will that work, that dynamic? We'll have to wait and watch.
Indian diplomats are cautious not to preempt any discussions that will take place when the two leaders meet. Indian envoy Sarna suggests it is up to the leaders to decide what they wish to talk about. But it is understood that defense, security and science and technology will be on the agenda. Trump administration has already cleared the sale of Predator Guardian drones to India. However, Indian expats will be hoping that the Prime Minister brings up the issue of H-1B visas as well as the recent spike in intolerance towards immigrants in the US. It's now up to the two leaders, who have spoken at least 3 times on the telephone, to decide the fate of India-US relationship. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, on that note, I want to thank my guest, Ambassador Sajjanhar in the studio, and Pramit Chaudhuri, who joined us via Skype from New Delhi. With that, it's a wrap on this bulletin, but news continues here on WION. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.